right, so I think we're going to get started. So thank you for joining us, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing eating for better heart health. My name is Cheryl, as Kim mentioned. I am the dietitian at the Zare stores in Kingsville and on Malden Road. And my kind of growing areas of expertise would be chronic disease prevention and management, sports nutrition, and weight management. So if you have any, inquiries about those things, please feel free to let me know. If you have, any other nutrition concerns, I also work with a whole team of people who have all kinds of different niches. So again, let me know. I'd be happy to put you in touch with someone if it's not me. All right, so just a little overview of what registered dietitians are. We are registered health professionals like doctors, nurses, physiotherapists. We have to write board exams to do our job. We use evidence-based approaches. We're the only nutrition professionals with credentials to work in hospitals. So a little bit different from a nutritionist on all of that sense. Nutritionists don't have to go through the same kind of schooling and that kind of thing, so you just want to make sure that you do your research if you are going to be working with a nutritionist. And you can find us in hospitals, community health centers, clinics, private practice sometimes, different kind of industry settings, working in food service and grocery stores as well. So that's like what I do. And we work with you to establish personalized and realistic nutrition goals. So just an overview of some of the services that we offer at Loblaws specifically. Individual nutrition consultations, that's kind of our bread and butter. That's the majority of what we do. Shop with your dietitian services. That's a really popular one. We take you through the store, show you different products based on your needs and kind of what you're looking for. Pantry refresh, online workshops and webinars, school group tours, which we are also doing virtually now, and corporate wellness events. So all kinds of stuff. If there is something that you need that's not listed here, you can always let me know. We usually are pretty flexible with working together and trying to figure out how we can help. And then for today's agenda, it's a bit of a hefty one. So we're going to be discussing the balanced plate, the Mediterranean diet, some meals and snacks, fat, fiber, antioxidants, sodium, and sugar, strategies and label reading, and movement, sleep, and stress. So let's get started. We're going to start off with those foundations of healthy eating, which are going to revolve around finding balance in our foods and the Mediterranean diet. Now, we will take a closer look at each of these, but I just want to emphasize how important it is to integrate balance into your life. And you will see that the Mediterranean diet itself also provides for some of that balance. All right, so to start us off, we're going to be taking a look at a snapshot, actually, of Canada's food guide. So that's this right here. You can see it's also called the healthy plate, if you've ever heard it termed that. Balanced plate, healthy plate, Canada's food guide, all kind of showing us the same things. So on the one side there, you've got half your plate filled with fruits and vegetables. I typically recommend that you do non-starchy vegetables there. So the potatoes, for instance, those could be considered starches. You can see kind of at the bottom towards the middle there, there's some potato wedges. Oh, sorry, this keeps moving on me. Okay, so I usually those are more of a starchy veg. I would usually include those in that bottom quarter. That bottom quarter is going to be for your starches and whole grains. So you want to aim for that bottom quarter to be about 50% whole grains, and we're going to talk about whole grains a lot more later on. And then that top portion, that is going to be for protein. So you might notice there's a lot of vegetarian sources of protein in there as well. So they're trying to encourage, a little bit more of that. So some of these would include some beans and legumes, tofu, nuts. You might also notice some salmon on there. That's a reminder for us to include fish a couple times a week. Fish such as salmon, trout, herring, those fatty fish. They contain omega-3s, which are very good for our heart health as well. And then finally, you'll see at the top on the side, it's suggested to have water as your drink of choice for optimal hydration. Okay, so this is actually Canada's food guide. I think this one came out in 2018. Don't quote me on that year, but I'm pretty sure it was 2018. It's a little bit easier to use than some of the previous food guides that we had. All right, so then we're gonna take that Canada's food guide, because that was what we called that balance plate, right? So now we're gonna take that Canada's food guide and apply it to our snacks using balance. So your snacks, you want to be primarily made up of about half fiber and about half protein. If it's not exact, it's not exact. But that's what we're aiming for. So does anyone know why we might be aiming for protein and fiber specifically for our snacks? Or anybody have a guess?
To fill you up?
Yes, that's exactly it. It's very simple. Those two things help to keep you feeling fuller longer. So there are two kinds of fiber in our diets, soluble and insoluble. Soluble fiber becomes gel-like and slows our digestion, keeping our blood sugars from spiking and crashing. Insoluble actually does not get digested. It actually provides some bulk. So when you pair that with something like protein, which is also very slow to digest, it kind of extends that feeling of fullness and satisfaction. So you're not, reaching for something 20 minutes later because you're not satisfied from the snack that you had. And we're going to talk about fiber in more detail later on as well too. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so the other thing to consider when we are discussing balancing our diets is that we have to be a little bit flexible with ourselves. So we have to keep that in mind that things aren't always going to go the way that we planned. You have to factor in for, celebratory dinners, holiday dinners. There's going to be days where you wind up being much busier than you anticipated. And not every meal is going to follow Canada's food guide, and that's okay. Canada's food guide is just that. It's a guide for you to reference when making meals. It is important to keep in mind that this likely will not happen every single time, but is something that you can always refer back to. We often talk about following an 80-20 rule when we talk about food and nutrition. And that's because nutrition, it's not black and white. It's not all or nothing, which is sometimes kind of hard to wrap our head around. But a healthy diet is actually going to be based on that bigger overall picture. Okay, so here we've got the Mediterranean diet pyramid. So this diet focuses on vegetables, whole grains, and plant proteins. So you can see that big bottom section of the triangle there, that's all of those fruits, vegetables, grains, mostly whole grains, olive oil, beans, nuts, legumes, seeds, herbs, and spices. A whole lot of stuff fits into that. You'll notice it's a lot of plant foods. And then as you move up that pyramid, we're going to jumping up to the top part there, you'll see that it's actually reduced servings of meats and sweets. So they have fish right in the middle because they do encourage you to have fish a couple times a week. But if you want to reduce your meats and then at the very top those sweets, that's kind of what's encouraged on the Mediterranean diet. And research supports this way of eating for a healthy heart. So if you notice, the very base of this diet that bottom base part, that is focused on being physically active and enjoying meals with others. So it's not just about, getting the food in. It's about taking the time to sit down, enjoy it so that you feel satisfied, so you're not reaching for more food later on, and enjoying it with others, which is kind of like a de-stress in and of itself, and being physically active on top of that. Okay, any questions about the pyramid? All right. So while the Mediterranean diet can be different from place to place, each region's version of the Mediterranean diet tends to be high in plant foods like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds, olive oil and legumes, which include things like beans, peas, and lentils. Fish, seafood, and eggs, and low-fat milk and milk products are eaten in moderate amounts along with red wine with meals, and then meat and meat products and sweet foods are eaten occasionally. So just a bit of an overview, and then following a Mediterranean-style diet can reduce risk of heart disease, lower cholesterol and blood pressure, as well as improve blood sugars for those with type 2 diabetes. All right, so we're gonna take a look at some different balanced meals. We have a lot here to look at. So the first one there is a bento bowl. So that's gonna have all kinds of different things in it. Lots of different fruits and veggies. You wanna have your whole grains. That's probably gonna be underneath the you can't really see it in the picture. And then you've got some protein on top. Spaghetti, you can actually incorporate some meatballs if you want some protein. You can buy spaghetti now that has protein in it. You can put either meat, lentils in your sauce to include more protein. And then we've got stir fry and eggs. Again, those eggs for a little bit of protein, and quiche and frittata. So you'll notice that each of these plates look a little bit different. They don't look exactly like Canada's food guide, and that's okay. They're still following those guidelines. So another one would be homemade pizza with some canned fruits or vegetables on top, homemade soup, and homemade vegetarian chili. And we've got some more meal ideas. So here, I just want to go over. So the quarter plate of whole grains and starchy vegetables, that's going to be about the size of your fist. The quarter plate of protein, again, about the size of your fist, or if it's a piece of meat, you want to aim for about the size of your palm and about that thickness as well. And then half a plate of vegetables is going to be about 2 handfuls. And then fat, usually we say about the size of your thumb. And flavor, I mean, you can add as much flavor as you'd like. So as long as it tastes good, that's all that matters. So looking at the quinoa fajita bowl, we've got a quarter plate of grains and starchy veg, a quarter plate of your protein as black beans, half plate as vegetables, being like peppers, onions, that kind of thing. The avocado is going to be your fat, which is about this big, and then as much flavor as you'd like. Same thing for the 1 skillet potato hash. You have your quarter plate as the sweet potatoes, about a quarter plate as your eggs, 2 handfuls of vegetables, about 1 thumb size of olive oil, as much seasoning as you'd like. And we've got the 1 pan salmon bake here, which is going to use, that's actually a 5-grain blend that they sell at the store. So about a quarter plate of that, quarter of your salmon, because salmon is going to be considered like a meat, right? So you want to go with that palm size. 2 handfuls of broccoli, and that oil actually is avocado oil, so you're going to use about a thumb size of that, and then throw on your spices. So any questions about that? The hand sizes are kind of handy. That's actually what they call them, the handy sizes, to refer to.
How do you figure out serving size when you're making something like that?
So the serving size, really, it is based off of the hands. So one whole plate, you know, is going to be your serving, and it's going to be based off of those hand gestures. So
I'm assuming until you're mixing them together, the quinoa, the beans, the rice, you're throwing all that together to make a bowl.
oh, I see what you mean.
And then that would be too much for you. Like, I'm thinking, how would that be served lunch? Like,
So I guess it would kind of depend on how much you have, but I would look at it as, you know, that the grain and the protein is going to be about half the amount of the vegetables, right? So you want to start off with the ratios being correct. And then if you do end up mixing it all together, once you put it on your plate, it's going to be mixed in the correct ratios. So I know what you mean. It's a little bit tough when it's like this, but if you're mixing it correctly in the proper ratios, once it goes on your plate, you'll still have the correct ratios. It just won't be divided up. Okay, does that kind of answer your question?
yes, I'm saying it doesn't matter how much you eat of it. It's not a serving size. Eating all of it, eating half of it, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not necessary. About a plate is going to be considered a serving size. So about like an 8 to 9 inch plate is going to be your regular size. And then once you've got all that on there, you're going to be at the proper serving size. Okay? So yeah, use those hand gestures. They're really useful, especially when you're trying to eyeball it. I know trying to measure everything by the gram and by the ounce, and like that gets kind of annoying, to be honest with you. So use those hand sizes. They're a lot easier. All right, and then again, having some balanced snacks with the half fiber and half protein. So we've got a few different examples here. There's some yogurt with some granola and berries. You're going to get protein from that yogurt, fiber from the berries and oats in there. Hummus and veggie sticks, you'll get actually a little bit of fiber and protein from the hummus itself, and a little more fiber from the carrot sticks. A little bit of fiber from the grapes, and a little bit of protein from the cheese. And again, a little bit of fiber from the banana, more protein from the peanut butter. Here we've got, I kind of like this because it looks like you can kind of pick and choose your protein and your fiber. So, you know, instead of having the same thing all the time, you can kind of mix it up a little bit. You could do, say, peanut butter with some celery, or whole grain cereal or oatmeal with maybe a yogurt-based dip or a plain Greek yogurt, whole grain pita with maybe again one of those yogurt-based dips, maybe some apple slices and cheese. So it just kind of gives you a visual that you can mix it up a little bit. And same thing, we're looking at, you know, kind of the same things here, just a little bit easier to see. And I like this visual because it allows you to see that the protein foods are a mix of some animal-based products and some vegetarian sources of protein too. So don't forget that you can get both. And your fiber foods, same thing, you've got some plant-based there. Well, they're all plant-based, but you've got some fruits and veggies in there. And then you've also got your, you know, some of those bread products like whole grain pita. You've got your cereal or oatmeal and some whole grain crackers. Okay, so, oh yes.
I like almonds. How many almonds should I have as a snack?
About how many?
Yeah, I know they're kind of fat, like nuts.
Yeah, so it does differ depending on like your specific needs. I think that there's a common, like, some people say 7 or 12 almonds, I can't remember exactly, but that's not going to be specific to your needs. So if you want to talk a little bit after, we can go through it a bit more, because it's going to be different for everyone. But usually I would say like a small handful is going to be a pretty good amount.
Can't have a whole jar.
You might have a bit of an upset stomach after a whole jar, but all right, so just a few more quick and easy snack ideas. You've got muffins with fruit, some energy bites, half a boiled egg with some fruits or vegetables, an apple and peanut butter, cheese and fruit, canned meat or some tuna on whole grain crackers, and peanut butter and celery. A few more. Greek yogurt parfaits, energy balls, chocolate hummus. I don't know if anyone has tried that. I have tried it. It surprised me. I didn't think I would like it, and I liked it. So don't knock it till you try it, guys. So some chocolate hummus with fruit or crackers, some smoothie, a smoothie made with maybe some kefir, flax, or hemp seeds, and some fruits and vegetables. Dates stuffed with peanut butter, or you can stuff it with almonds as well. Whole grain crackers with hummus and veggies, and roasted chickpeas or lentils with fruit and veggies. Okay, and then we've got some heart healthy specific meal and snack ideas. So a salmon stir fry with whole grain rice and vegetables of your choice. Some grain bowls with quinoa, vegetables topped with nuts and cheese. A smoothie bowl topped with granola and nuts and seeds. Energy bites, like those little circles that were in the picture before. So those are usually made up with something like oats, honey, some kind of nut butter and nuts. Seeds of your choice, so you could do hemp for some extra protein. You could do chia for some fiber, some flax, dried fruit. And then you've got trail mix, usually made up with some dried fruit, nuts and seeds, and some dark chocolate. And then a banana lentil muffin. So there's lots of different baking things that you can do to incorporate a little bit more protein and fiber as well. All right, so now we're going to jump into some key nutrients. These are going to be, mainly the focus is going to be whole grains, fiber, antioxidants and polyphenols, some fats, and then we're also going to discuss a little bit about sodium and some sugar, that kind of thing. All right, so we did discuss this earlier a little bit, but you want to aim for that quarter of your plate to be starches and at least 50% of those starches to be whole grains. So these can include barley, rye, oats, couscous, brown rice, and whole wheat pastas can also be included here. Now we want to include more of these whole grains because they provide us with more nutrients than their refined counterparts. So if you take a look at that grain that's on the screen, that is kind of just a drawing of a grain. So if you start at that outer layer, that brown outer layer, that's going to be the bran. So it's a multi-layered outer skin of that edible kernel, and that contains important antioxidants, fiber, B vitamins, and minerals. So that's got a lot packed into that outer layer there. The endosperm, which is that inner, like that big part on the inside, the endosperm is the germ's food supply, which helps a young plant send roots down for water and nutrients and then sprout up for sunlight. So it is the largest part of the kernel. It contains starchy carbs, protein, and a small amount of vitamins and minerals. And then the smallest part down at the bottom there, that like kind of looks like an egg, but that smallest part there, that's actually called the germ or the embryo, which can sprout into a new plant. So this also contains a lot of B vitamins, vitamin E, antioxidants, phytochemicals, some protein, minerals, and healthy fats. So the germ and the bran contain all kinds of like really great stuff for us. So when something is refined, it means one of these, at least one of these parts of the grain have been removed. So for instance, white flour and white rice are both primarily that endosperm part, the one that unfortunately doesn't contain as much nutrients as the other two. And because the bran and the germ have been removed through the refining process. So refining a grain can remove a quarter of its protein and can remove many of those key nutrients. So any questions on that? I found this very interesting, yes.
Just one thing. How can a person with celiac replace that for the whole grains? Because my husband Kenny owns rye, barley, wheat, any of the whole grains, and they don't have them.
So
Their products.
There are some whole grains. Actually, maybe we should connect after and I can share with you a few different whole grains that you can have, because it's that wheat, barley, and rye that is going to be the main limiting pieces. But he should be able to have some other whole grains. I think I have a list on my computer here I can share with you after, okay? All right, so taking a look at fiber, I know I said we would discuss it, so here we are diving in. So we've got two kinds of fiber. Like I said before, soluble fiber turns into more of a gel. This will slow the process of digestion, keeping our blood sugars from spiking, and it's really good for our heart health. This is found in foods like oat bran, barley, nuts, seeds, beans, lentils, peas, and some fruits and vegetables. Insoluble fiber is not digested, and it helps move food through our stomach and intestines by providing that bulk like we discussed earlier. So again, fiber is going to help to slow that digestion and keep you feeling more full and satisfied. And total fiber intake, the recommendations are between 25 and 38 grams. So you'll notice if you look at a nutrition label, you'll see a few grams for a pretty high percentage of your daily value. That's because the total that you're aiming for is 25 to 38, but believe it or not, a lot of people aren't reaching that. So definitely something that you want to be taking a look into. So some strategies to increase fiber. You want to choose whole grain breads and pastas. So when you're looking at that nutrition label, take a look at the ingredients on it. It should say whole grain flour or whatever it is, but whole grain should be one of the first ingredients. You want to add fiber boosting foods when you can, so such as avocados, Brussels sprouts, oranges, sweet potato. Some other foods would be lentils, barley, nuts, seeds, and oats. And balance meals and snacks with fiber-rich foods. All right, so jumping in a little bit to fat sources. Oh, that one's cut off a little bit. So you want to focus on the type and amount of fat in your day. Saturated fats come from products like dairy products, meat, coconut, and coconut oil. Those are kind of the ones that you want to be a little bit more aware. Well, you want to be aware of all of them, but you want to be careful of your saturated fats. And unsaturated fats, this could be mono or polyunsaturated fats. So mono are from things like olive oil, avocado, almonds, and cashews. And polyunsaturated fats actually include those omega-3 fatty acids that we are going to talk a little bit more about. Okay, so omega-3s are healthy fats that we need from foods in our diet because our bodies won't make them. So I don't know if you've seen that word essential fatty acids. This would be one of them because we need to get it in our diet. So there are three types: ALA, EPA, and DHA. Don't ask me to say what those say the full words because they're very long and a little bit tricky. So EPA and DHA omega-3s have many heart health benefits, including lowering your risk for heart disease, reducing blood pressure, helping to keep blood vessels and arteries from becoming stiff, helping to prevent blood clots, and helping to lower triglycerides. Although ALA is still a good source of healthy fats, they're not going to improve your heart health as much as those foods with EPA and DHA. So you'll notice that EPA and DHA, those are coming from those fatty fish sources, and you want to aim for those. That's why we recommend having those fatty fish about twice a week. So, and then if you do decide to take a supplement, I do, and many dietitians do prefer food first, but if you do decide that, you really aren't getting in your omega-3s and you've talked to, your healthcare provider and you've both said that you should take a supplement, just check with your pharmacist, doctor, or dietitian that you are taking a good one for your needs. Okay, so Fats and oils. So we're going to take a look at a few common cooking agents here. So we've got butter versus margarine, which is kind of the age-old debate. Olive and canola oils, and then I've got coconut oil on there as well. So when looking at butter versus margarine, it's important to note that butter does have more saturated fats compared to margarine. So you just want to keep that in mind when selecting which one to choose. If you are someone who prefers the taste of butter much more over the taste of margarine, just be aware of the amount that you are using and consider the other sources of saturated fats that you may have had that day. So it doesn't mean you can't have it, it just means you want to take it into consideration when you're looking at your whole day. Olive oil and canola oil, these are actually both really good oils to use for cooking or flavoring. I believe canola oil I think it has a higher smoke point than olive oil. And I know whether olive oil is extra virgin or regular olive oil, that makes a bit of a difference too. So canola oil is going to be used really well for cooking. Olive oil might be really good for things like dressings. Yes, thank you. This. And they both have relatively lower amounts of saturated fats. And then I put coconut oil on here because I know in the past few years there's been a whole lot of hype about coconut oil and all its fantastic benefits and everything, but I just wanted to note that it is very high in saturated fats. It is much higher than a lot of the other oils. So again, if you like it, that doesn't mean you can't have it. It just means keep that in mind when you're considering what else you've had in your day. All right, moving on to a little bit about cholesterol. So what is blood cholesterol? The liver makes cholesterol that circulates in the blood. We've got low density lipoproteins, or you may have heard LDL cholesterol. This can form plaque on your artery walls and block blood flow to your brain. And we want to aim for lower LDL cholesterol levels. You may have also heard of high density lipoproteins, or HDL cholesterol. That actually helps to remove the LDL cholesterol from your arteries, and we want to aim for higher HDL cholesterol levels in our blood. So with cholesterol, we want to choose foods that are lower in saturated fats and try to include some unsaturated fats like mono or polyunsaturated. That's going to help to level out those blood cholesterol levels. And then just a reminder to eat foods high in fiber, as this plays a role in lowering cholesterol as well, and so will physical activity. Oh, there we go. All right, moving on to antioxidants and polyphenols. So as you might notice, you've got a lot of beautiful colors in this background picture here. That's because colors are really important. So before we dive into that, I just wanted to point it out so you can look at it and admire, but before we dive into it, let's talk a little bit about polyphenols. So they are chemical compounds that are naturally occurring and have antioxidant properties that could potentially offer some protection from the development of heart disease and diabetes. Antioxidants are nutrients found naturally in foods, especially those that are dark colored or brightly colored. So they can be a vitamin, mineral, or phytochemicals that are naturally occurring plant substances. And having a diet rich in antioxidants can help prevent chronic diseases like cancer and heart disease. So you really want to try to incorporate as many different colors as you can, because different colors on the foods actually represent different colors, different nutrients. All right, talking about sodium a little bit here. So just a tip for sodium is to choose or prepare foods with little to no added salt. You can flavor foods with herbs such as rosemary, oregano, parsley, basil, and mint. You can mix spices like paprika, black pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg into dishes that need a little bit of extra flavor. Go back to recipes that you've used in the past. Take a look at the spice blends that they have used, and maybe use those moving forward. You can top your soups, stews, and other dishes with chopped or minced garlic, onion, or herbs. You do want to limit salty foods and processed and packaged foods such as pickles, crackers, snack foods, deli meats, canned and dry soup, sauces, and condiments. So you'll notice that all of those things usually come already prepared for you. They're in packages. Those often will contain a good amount of salt in them. Double check that label, and we'll talk about label reading in a little bit. And then avoid shaking salt on food and use little or no salt in cooking. So salt is something that we don't usually have to strive to get enough of. Usually in our diets we will end up getting enough of it because it's used in flavor and preserving and all that kind of thing. So you just want to be a little bit aware when you are flavoring your foods, not to put too much.
How many milligrams of sodium are we supposed to have, or how many teaspoons a day?
The higher end of the recommendation is 2,000. Yeah, 2,000 milligrams. But most people will surpass it. Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's not as much as you think. That is if you do have any, if you have high blood pressure or anything like that, it does change. It comes down, I want to say, to about 1,800. I'd have to double check, but yeah, normally the upper level that you want to go to is around 2,000, but it is very, very easy to reach that. So we've got some strategies here to limit your sodium intake. So limit your use of salt in cooking and at the table. Limit frozen foods such as pizza and frozen dinners. Choose low sodium or no salt added canned or prepared foods. Drain and rinse canned products that contain salt when possible. So if you ever buy canned beans or really any canned vegetable products, look for it saying no salt added. Or if you do have it with salt, just put it in a strainer, rinse it off, give it a good shake and rinse. That'll help to get some of the salt off. Read the nutrition facts table on food packages for sodium content. Compare to similar products and choose the lower sodium option. And use other seasonings such as herbs, spices, lemon juice, and garlic during food preparation instead of salt. So then here I've just got some examples of some spice blends that you can use on different dishes. So for fish, you could try paprika, mustard, curry powder, lemon, lime, dill, ginger, or garlic. For beef, you can try mustard powder, nutmeg, thyme, rosemary, curry powder, or garlic. For pork, apple, thyme, onion, applesauce, garlic. Garlic is in almost all of them. Chicken, you can try parsley, garlic, lemon, basil, and onion. And potatoes, you can try chives, green onion, garlic, parsley, and paprika. So just some different, ideas for things to use instead of salt. You might find some on here that you've never tried before, and maybe now would be a good time to give it a whirl. Okay, so just going to discuss some highly processed foods and sugar-sweetened beverages a little bit. So highly processed foods should be limited. They are those foods that are changed from their original food source. So when you see something like this drink here, looks like one of them could be orange flavored. That is incredibly different from eating an orange, right? So highly processed foods will often have added sugars, salt, and fat. And we find a lot of these processed foods in packages. So sugary drinks, they can be high in calories, but they don't tend to keep us full, and it's easy to drink too much. They often do have a high sugar content as well. So you are better off to reach for whole fruit versus fruit juice in terms of the amount of nutrients that you're going to get out of that. That doesn't mean that you can never have it though. It just means that, you know, if you are looking for something that's going to be more nutrient dense, that whole fruit is going to have more. And start where you are and look at the big picture. Again, it is not realistic to say, I am never going to have your favorite sugary drink ever again. It's probably not going to happen. So be realistic about it. Look at where you are, and maybe making those small changes are really what's going to make a big difference for you. So just a few ideas when you are dealing with added sugars, a few ideas to keep in mind. So if you're picking cereal or granola bars, you want to, again, look for something that's whole grain. You can take a look at that ingredient label on the back. When you're choosing it, look for something that has 4 or more grams of fiber and 8 or less grams of sugar. That's kind of like, it can be a little bit tricky to find sometimes, but I promise you they are out there. You just have to take a look. We definitely got some at the store. Sugar sweetened beverages, you can try some naturally flavored sparkling water. Mix 100% fruit juice with some sparkling water, and then you can also try fruit infused water. Of course, these aren't going to be as strong of flavors, but they're still very tasty. You might find them to be a little bit more satisfying if you're trying to quench your thirst. And for yogurt, you can add fruit, applesauce, honey, or maple syrup to sweeten plain yogurt. This is usually a really good option because sometimes flavored yogurts have a really high amount of sugar. And even I like to put in frozen berries personally and like kind of mix it around and they melt in. And that I find is a really, really nice way to make plain yogurt actually taste good. And mix half flavored yogurt into plain yogurt. So again, you're just cutting out a little bit of that sugar, but you're still getting that flavor.
What do you think about these sparkling water drinks that have come out, like Pedler and
Yeah.
like they have no sugar, no sodium, it's just
Yeah.
sparkling water
And some kind of natural flavor usually. Yeah, if you enjoy them, I think that's a fine source. A lot of people don't like plain water at all, and to me, that's fine to drink. If it does, some of them do have sweeteners in it, which I know some people can be a little bit hesitant about sweeteners. There are some sugar alcohol sweeteners that can cause some upset stomach for people. Won't happen for everyone. It just kind of depends on you. So if those bother you, you just want to be careful that you are checking for sugar alcohols. They usually will end with OL. So if you see something like sorbitol, erythritol, xylitol on the ingredient list, just be a little bit aware that it could cause some stomach upset. It doesn't for everyone. It doesn't cause my stomach to be upset, but it is possible.
or stevia is better, or something
Stevia is fine too. All of the sweeteners are safe to use. They do get a bit of a bad rap, but you have to have very high amounts, like very, very high amounts per day for it to be not safe. And it's not realistic that someone is going to actually reach those amounts. And it's different for every sweetener, but they are all very high. And they have all been deemed safe to use. So I think if that's something that you like and it will actually get you to drink a little bit more and stay hydrated, then go for it. All right, and then we've got a few other foods here to consider. So coffee can increase your cortisol, which is your stress hormone. This plays into the process of inflammation. It can increase your inflammation a little bit. So you do want to try to limit to 3 cups a day. I know that might be hard for some people, but try. try if you can, because you don't want to increase your cortisol levels too much. Sugar can increase inflammation as well, so try to aim for less than 10 grams per serving. Green tea is rich in polyphenols, which contributes to anti-inflammatory effects. And herbs and spices contain some antioxidants, are anti-inflammatory as well. Of course, this is dependent on the spice and the herb itself, but some good examples would be turmeric, cinnamon, garlic, and cayenne. All right, so some tools here to get you started on this, if you do decide to try some of these things. A few tools would be label reading, which I promised we would discuss. So the first thing that you want to do when you're looking at a label is take a look at the serving size. So these serving sizes, they are now supposed to be more representative of what someone would eat. They're putting that into effect where the serving sizes have to be a little bit more realistic. Before you might see like 2 crackers or something like that. Well, nobody eats 2 crackers, let's be honest. So they're now, I don't think it's passed yet. I think they still have either this year, it's in the very near future. A lot of labels are starting to switch over, but they are supposed to represent a more realistic serving size. So that's the first thing that you want to take a look at. And then the second thing is interpreting that % daily value. So a good rule of thumb that we like to use is that 5% of your daily value is going to be a little bit, and 15% of your daily value is going to be a lot. So 5% or less, or 15% or more. So when you're going down the nutrition label there, things like sodium, if you are concerned about your blood pressure, your heart health, that's something that you maybe want to look at as being 5% or less of your daily value. And it is important to note that the daily value is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. That's kind of like an average. This isn't, of course, will not be exact for every single person, but it's just an approximate for the general population. So again, 5% or less is a little, 15% or more is a lot. So they've got some examples there. So 4% of your daily value of fat is going to be a little bit. 17% of your daily value of calcium is going to be a lot. So if I was looking at something like this, and I'm looking and I'm going, oh, like there's not too much fat in this. Maybe it's my saturated fats that we're looking at. Oh, there's not too much saturated fats. Oh, there is a good amount of calcium in here. Maybe take a look, and the rest of the nutrition label looks pretty good. That might be a nice nutrient-dense product.
You should look at saturated fat and unsaturated on the labels too.
So the labels usually will have saturated and trans. So if you see you've got total fat percentage, and then underneath is saturated and trans fats, I usually will pay a little bit more attention to the saturated. Trans fats, not really anything that's packaged. I shouldn't say that. Some things that are packaged are going to have it. I would look at it if there is a percentage there. A lot of times it's very low, but saturated and trans fats are usually the ones that I personally focus on a little bit more than the total.
So your fats should be, I've heard that they should be less than 3 grams or less when you're looking at labels and stuff.
So you want to aim for like saturated fats. I would suggest looking at more of that % daily value and doing 5 or less. Yeah, it gives you a little bit more leeway. 3 can be a little bit low, and it especially depends on the item itself. If it's a snack or if it's a meal, it's going to...
Based on a 2,000 calorie diet, so somebody that's trying to lose weight would want probably less.
You might go a little bit more then if you are trying to lose weight, but usually that if you stick with that 5% or less, that's still going to be a good gauge for you. All right, And then something else, a little tool that I like to use with clients a lot is mindful eating. So this is kind of the meaning to an end to intuitive eating. Mindful eating is really about being present in the moment, taking the time to enjoy your food, limiting the distractions around you during mealtime if you can. Just being aware of the thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and environment without evaluating their importance or trying to modify them, but just it's really based on focusing in on enjoying the meal that you are having, allowing yourself to be aware of all the senses when you are eating, and it promotes balance, choice, and acceptance of what is present. And this hunger fullness scale, this is kind of part of mindful eating. Some people call it the mindful eating scale. So this is a scale to use throughout the day to identify how hungry you are. You can use it while you're eating so that you become aware of, okay, I'm actually getting full, and you can stop and say, I've been satisfied from this meal before you reach the point of overeating. Because a lot of times we want to try to stay between about a 4 and a 7, 3 to 8 is kind of the outer edges, but we try to stay between about a 4 to a 7. And a lot of times when we're eating, we eat very quickly, and then about 20 minutes after a meal, we're hitting about a 9 or a 10 on the scale. We're a little bit over full, a little bit uncomfortable. You should feel some sense of fullness, but you shouldn't be uncomfortable. So if you allow yourself to kind of check in before you start eating, because that's really important too. A lot of times if we're starting at a 1 or a 2, we will eat to a 9 or a 10 because we're ravenous and we're eating really quickly. So you want to try and eat usually when you're hitting about a 3 or a 4, and then stopping when you're at about a 7 or an 8. All right, and then we've got a few other considerations here. So exercise, sleep, and stress. So physical activity, this should be something that you enjoy, not something that you're doing as a punishment or to make up for eating. It should be something that you like to do, even if it's going for a walk or doing something simple. That is still physical activity and should still be accounted for. View it as a form of self-care and something that makes you feel good. Like I said, all movement counts, so you want to build it into your routine. I know, she's an overachiever, I know. Yeah, no, I don't suggest balancing on the rock like she does, but... All right, and then sleep. Sleep is very important. Most adults do require 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I know that can be very hard sometimes to get. If you are having trouble sleeping, definitely I would suggest talking to a healthcare practitioner. Prolonged lack of sleep increases the risk of health conditions such as diabetes and heart disease. It can also lead to craving energy-dense foods and lacking energy to prepare food. It can affect our hormones by increasing our hunger hormone and our fat storage. And you want to make sure that you're considering monitoring your sleep hygiene. So setting up your nighttime routine, getting yourself ready for bed so that your body starts to know, okay, we're going to sleep now. And again, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but having your phone on you before bed, having your phone when you wake up, that can affect your sleep as well, so just be aware of that. All right, and stress. So stress and our mental health have a huge impact on overall health. Identifying the source of stress and the emotions that ensue can help to ground you. So some symptoms of stress include, and I know that these are, sometimes we don't always think about stress in terms of our diet, but it actually does affect our diet because it can cause an increased or decreased appetite for some people. It can promote emotional eating. It can cause gastrointestinal issues. Chronic stress can also increase cortisol, which increases fat storage. So if you are someone that is chronically stressed, we definitely want to try to, find some outlets for that. Talking to a mental health provider can help you to manage your stress. They can help to, kind of teach you some different ways to alleviate that stress as well. So again, progress, not perfection. Like I said, eating is not black or white. It is not all or nothing. It can be hard to wrap our head around that. I do like to keep that 80-20 rule in the back of my mind, but it's not going to be perfect. You still want to enjoy your food too. That is going to be part of that progress. So just keep that in mind. It's not all steamed veggies and boiled chicken. It's a lot more than that. Okay, and then some key takeaways here. Aim to balance meals and snacks. Aim for whole grains and increasing fiber. Consider those fat sources. Be mindful of your sodium. With that, try to cook from home if you can. And sleep, stress, and movement. Try to, manage your sleep and stress as best you can and incorporate movement when possible. And I would like to thank you all for coming and listening to me for a full hour. That's amazing. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I would invite you now. If you don't want to ask in front of everyone, I will hang back for a little bit to answer any questions. And I have my contact information there as well. And if you'd like to let us know how we did, you can call this number. My store number is right there. That's the Kingsville store. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.